Printers, I like to look at printers as kind of like the shavers of the computer world. The razors of the computer world. Because you can buy a laser printer, pretty dang good one, for $99. And it comes with its own toner. Where do they get you? Ink. The toner or the ink. Because when you have to buy that next toner cartridge, you're paying more for the cartridge than you did for the printer originally. It's like the razors. You ever buy razors with the refillable blades on them?
Mm-hmm.
All right, you get the razor dirt cheap. You pay for the blades. All right, they'll give you razors. You know, you buy 10 packs of alkaline energizers, they'll often give you free razors. You think, oh, dang, I'm getting a free razor. Yeah, but then once it runs out, you either throw the razor out or you got to fill it. And that's where you're going to pay again and again and again. So if you're doing just printing out, you know, real simple, if you're just doing text, you don't want to buy a high-end graphics printer. Because you're going to be spending the money on toner. But if you're, anyone here into photography? Anyone here want to be into doing your own prints? Because if you want to do your own prints, you want to make sure that the printer you buy is one that can be recharged by yourself. In other words, you don't have to buy, for example, I use an Epson R2400. It's an old printer. But I can refill the ink cartridges on my own. Because the cost of me refilling an ink cartridge, say if I'm using magenta, if I buy the magenta cartridge from Epson, I'm going to pay about 25 bucks. I can refill it myself for $5 by buying bulk ink. So if you're taking photography seriously, you want to get into printers that you can do your own refillable cartridges rather than buying from Epson. Because if you buy ink from Epson and one of those cartridges runs out, they make you buy the whole set very often. Or it becomes very difficult to predict when the different colors are going to run out. So you want to be aware that whether they be inkjet and the inks or the toners, and if you are going to do your own photography, you want to make sure you're also using archive quality ink. Now, if anyone here had an HP printer and you printed out a photograph on it, we'll say 10 years ago, go back and look at that picture now. Because the ink or the dye on that printout has degraded considerably because it has a lot of filler on it. Anyone remember Polaroid one-step cameras? All right, where you just, you point and click and then the thing prints out for you. Go back and look at some of those old pictures. You're going to find out that someone who looked really beautiful in that day looks like they're about 90 and they've sagged on every part of their body. Because the toner on that print has degraded. They aren't light fast and they aren't heat fast. That's why often old Polaroids look really crappy because they've degraded over time. So you want to make sure if you're doing your own printing for photography that you're using archival quality ink, museum quality that will last well over 100 years. There are still dot matrix printers in place. If you go into, for example, I think it's Pep Boys, and you buy something, they still have a dot matrix printer in there. Right? So the paper comes in giant rolls with, and you actually, there are fasteners on each side, and it just rolls out and rolls out and rolls out and rolls out. Very inexpensive. I want to talk now about data communication. And that's where we are transmitting information from one computer to another, or from a computer to some type of peripheral device. So the components you see are not only the sender, the computer itself, but a channel. And the channel might be something as simple as the wire on this keyboard. But it may be the infrared, it may be the Wi-Fi, so that's the channel, to a receiver. Someone or some machine at the other end. Using various protocols. In essence, those are different sets of instructions that are used to encode and decode information, and then device drivers. And this is why sometimes when people have upgraded their systems and you're using, we'll say you're using your Samsung cell phone and you've upgraded to Windows 10, and all of a sudden you used to be able to, with Windows XP or Windows 8 or Windows 7, you were able to read that Samsung, and all of a sudden you've upgraded to Windows 10 and it won't read the phone. That's because the drivers that will read that phone aren't installed in the operating system, so you actually have to go to Samsung, possibly download those instructions onto your computer so they will read the phone once again. So sometimes when things stop working, it's because the drivers have become outdated. And very often information is transmitted over networks. So a network is which connects computers and peripheral devices so they can share data. The basic components are the network's interface card. So if you look on the back of these computers here, and you look where the Ethernet cable is plugged in, that blue cable, it's plugged into, in essence, a miniature network card. And that's what allows that computer to be able to access the internet. So you have the network interface card. On PCs, you can often pull them right out, and depending on the upgrade you want to do, you can turn it so that it's wireless as compared to wired. And the wireless ones will have a little antenna on them. You have the network software that's required to run that card, and then you have the servers. Now, the types of networks that we have would be a client server. So some of the programs or the files or other kinds of resources are located on one computer that's called the server, but they're available to other systems on the network that are called the clients. These are client computers right here. And they are all hooked into the servers that are downstairs. If I were to send you an email, and I send it from here, the email is not going from here to here. The email is going from here downstairs and then sent back up to wherever you are extracting it. So it's actually taking the scenic route. It's not going there directly to you. Where you have peer-to-peer networks, those are where you can actually, different people in a network can be both suppliers and consumers of resources. One of the first widely available peer-to-peer networks to be able to share information without the intervention of any of these software companies was called Napster. And it was a real simple program, a very small program that allowed that individual to store a lot of music on his computer, and then anyone who had that address could go and download the music off of his computer. What happened to the inventor of Napster? He was arrested, and then they picked his brain. There are a lot of hackers who now work for the government because they were so good they got themselves a job with the government by getting arrested. So if you like to download music illegally and you think you're doing it on the sly, guess again, you're not. And I don't care what kind of firewall you think you have, the types of networks we have available to us. Where you have the local area network, and that gives that capability to a group of computers that are in close proximity to each other, such as an office building, a school, or a home. All right, these, as long as they're in the Ethernet, we call this a local area network. As compared to the wireless local area network, all right, and that allows you to, in essence, without the cables, and doing this more slowly than if you're using a LAN, but you can often reach a wider area with a wireless network. And it gives you the ability to move around and still pick up a signal. All right, these are, in essence, really large wireless network functions at a larger scale. And where is the central point for these? Where is the information going to before it goes to anyone else? So if I'm making a cell phone call and I say, call Fadden, is it calling my phone in my office? Where is it calling? It's going through a network, wirelessly. Where? It's calling a server, where? But the server is where? I have no idea. You know how it's getting to the server? You ever seen those cell phone towers? That's where that signal's going first. And I don't know where, because I think I'm using Verizon. Right? I'm not sure where their main hub is, but it's going there first. That's why it's a good idea when you are shopping for an internet connection and your cell phone, you want to do some research onto the age of the network capabilities. Because there are some providers out there that are using really outdated wiring and towers. Or they may be renting space off of someone else. And these things can be maintained around the world. For example, when I need work done on my house, when I need work done, we had to have our phone connection tested at the house. I love it because some guy in India picked up the phone and he called himself Henry. Why did he call himself Henry? That wasn't his real name. Why did he call himself Henry?
Slave name.
It's his slave name because he's working for the United States. And if he calls up and he says, "Hello, this is Pradeep. I'm not even getting someone in my own country." Well, I'm smart enough to know he's got a very thick accent like that. He's calling himself Henry. All right, guy's in India. And he's able to, from India, tell whether the line outside my house is working or not. But most of the techs that work for your phone companies, they're in other countries. But anytime you are sending information over the internet, you are facing a security threat.
Hello, Hal, do you read me? Hello, Hal, do you read me? Do you read me, Hal? Do you read me, Hal? Hello, Hal, do you read me? Hello, Hal, do you read me? Do you read me, Hal?
Affirmative, Dave. I read you.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
Where the hell did you get that idea, Hal?
Dave, although you took very thorough precautions in the pod against my hearing you, I could see your lips move.
All right, Hal. I'll go in through the emergency airlock.
Without your space helmet, Dave, we're going to find that rather difficult.
Hal, I won't argue with you anymore. Open the doors.
Dave, this conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
Hal? 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 Hal?
Do not say the answer out loud. But for 20 points extra credit, what's the movie? Who was the producer? And what is HAL an anagram for? What's the movie? Who produced it or directed it? And what is HAL an anagram for? Send it to me via email, no later than Friday. Don't say it out loud. But he's probably the earliest version of Terminator. You seen the movie Terminator, right? Artificial intelligence with legs. To kill. All right, the idea that machines themselves can be sentient and can enact various actions of mayhem. But that's still, although I remember when Oblivion was being worked out, there was a story going around, and I don't know if it was true, but they let Oblivion run on its own, and there were characters in the program that started going around and killing other characters that were key characters within. Are you familiar with Oblivion? It's part of the Morrowind series, the Elder Scrolls Morrowind. It was Oblivion was like Elder Scrolls 4. All right, and there was one of the heroes actually, when they let it run on its own, went around and started slaughtering villages. All right, but that's only in the program itself. All right, it doesn't happen in real life. All right, it's not going to be able to do anything to you. And so that person who says all these things do is mess up my social security check, no, someone did that. The computer didn't do it. And when we're getting the type of harm that can occur, they are things that are designed by human agents, as compared to Terminators, where in essence they were like viruses that took shape with artificial intelligence and took form as metal-killing machines. So whether it be viruses or Trojans, and the security steps that you can have, such as antivirus software or virus protection, as well as anti-spyware software, or firewalls.
What are Trojans?
Trojans, we'll talk about them in just a second. But they are, in essence, they are programs that get installed on your machine and appear innocent, but through various actions that you do can all of a sudden start to track information about you, as well as possibly start doing things with your computer that you don't want it to do. But it appears innocent initially. And those are malware. So malware, if it's a virus, it copies itself into other computer programs or data files and then starts to perform some type of harmful activity. And generally that harmful activity is to destroy data on your machine. To destroy the ability to manipulate data on your machine. I remember the first virus I ever saw was actually because people believed that Macs couldn't get infected or Apples couldn't get infected. The very first virus I saw was on an Apple machine. And what happened is the person turned on the computer and a screen came up and it said, "You've been bombed." And that was it. The computer didn't work anymore. It completely destroyed the Apple operating system. And it was something that came off the internet. All right, so it's generally to just do something that is destructive and that is harmful. In other words, data is destroyed. As compared to Trojans, which are often disguised as legitimate software, and they are designed to do things like steal your identity, get into your bank account, get into your email account, and start sending out messages to other people, advertisements and the like you may not want going out in your name. And they can be employed by cyber thieves or hackers that want to get access to user systems. So Trojans, you're often tricked on some type of instructions into loading or executing Trojans on your system. Right? If you've ever gone to a website and it says, "This many Trojans have been discovered on your computer, but if you click here, you can get rid of it." No, you've just installed that many more. Never, never, never click on any of those types of things that tell you that there have been anomalies found in your data, unless it is unless it's an antivirus program that you have bought. If you get it from a website, you are going to download malicious software. And then once they're activated, they can allow criminals to spy on you. For example, one of the most popular spywares is a key reader. In other words, it installs onto your machine, and then anything you type, it's sending to someone in Nigeria. And if you're in your bank account and you type your password in there, guess who's got your password? If you're on the internet, it's sending every keystroke that you hit to that remote source. So you want to be aware that, and people believe that Macs don't get hacked. Well, they do, especially now that they have Intel processors in them, so you can run Mac and PC programs on them. If you want a system that is dang near virus-proof, you would use the Linux operating system, which is free, technically. But there are legal threats too. For example, anyone here ever shop on Amazon.com or do any online shopping? And you've been browsing in Google, and all of a sudden the things you were browsing at Google appear in your Amazon window? Why does that happen?
Is that cookies?
Cookies, yeah. A little piece of data that has that website's URL is now sent to Amazon. And it can put that up there, because if you've been looking at buying a new book, or even looking at buying a used copy of Fallout 3, and all of a sudden I'm there and I said, wait a minute, I was just looking at Fallout 3 online, and here it is. And I was looking at it in eBay. And all of a sudden it's in my Amazon search. It's because those cookies have been sending my preferences to Google. Now, anyone here use Facebook? Show of hands. Have you ever noticed sometimes you've been doing things online and all of a sudden you get advertisements in Facebook? Because Facebook is owned by
Google.
Google. Who else is owned by Google? What's the number 2 search engine on the planet? What's the number 1 search engine? In other words, when you're doing an internet search, what is it? No.
Google.
Google. That's the search engine. So if you're in Chrome, you can go to google.com and do a search. If you're in Firefox, you go to Google, you do a search. Number 1. The number 2 search engine on the planet.
Bing.
No. No. YouTube. YouTube, which is owned by
Google.
Google. Google also owns the number 1 email service on the planet, which is? No. Gmail. So if you've ever seen anyone on their Facebook page say, Google does not have my permission to use my images or my text or anything like that, too late. Because you already signed a contract with Google to get that account in the first place, which says Google has permission to use cookies to access select personal information. We had one student in here last year that I said, well, why don't you type your name in the internet? Because they thought they didn't do anything on the internet. All right, I don't browse or anything like that. I just use Facebook. Every one of this person's images that they put in Facebook was all of a sudden showing under her name in Google. And in order to get permission, access to Facebook, when you click that little box, to be able to have a Facebook account, you're giving Google permission to monitor your activity. But it's not just Google. It's Amazon, it's the banks. That's pretty much the way of life in the 21st century. So with that in mind, that there is antivirus software which protects you against virus that can prevent, detect, or remove malicious computer viruses, but never, when you get one of those messages, if you pay us $49.95, we'll take this virus off your computer. Never do that, because you'll actually end up installing more stuff on your computer and paying $50. If something happens where your computer is behaving so ridiculously bad, take it to tech people. Do not use an online service. If you ever get a notice from the bank that says you need to log in and change your password, do not log in and change your password. The bank will never ask you for your password in an email. Will never tell you to enter your password in an email. We'll never do that. Or any other type of online shopping you may do. So antivirus software removes viruses. And there's free antivirus software out there. One of them might be Komodo. Another one is Avast. And they have them in the free version. Or you can also get the paid version, which is a higher capability. Often the paid versions will also monitor your email, a lot of activity. Firewall. That is something. Have you ever heard of a firewall before outside of computers? What's a firewall do? It's a shield against fire. A firewall often is created in a forest itself by actually burning trees. You create a firewall. Because what you do is that if you burn all the trees away, it's already burnt, so the fire can't jump across that into new growth. All right, in essence, when you put a firewall on a computer, you are setting up a barrier so you control what information comes in or goes out. So with software, the key components in an operating system would be Mac OS X. And the X means whatever version, X being a variable. All right, so we're now leaving the version, let's see, it was Yosemite and then El Capitan. And they've just released the beta version, and I can't remember what the new OS, what the X is now, because the X now is El Capitan, and then they're coming out with a beta version. And that's one of the things, too. When you're using operating systems, never buy in the beta version. You end up doing the work of the software developers. All right, when Windows 10 came out, I could have got it for free a year ago. I didn't do it because they're depending on you to test their software for them and be frustrated. You wait till it's out at least 6 to 8 months before you upgrade your system because most of the security problems or program problems will have been solved by other people who just want to be the first one. Same way, when a new video game comes out. You want to be the first one, to beat Final Fantasy 97. With Windows, one of the things they call a GUI, graphic user interface, because in the days before OS X or Windows, in essence, you had OS, operating system, and DOS, disk operating system, and it was all text-driven, and you typed the commands in. Once you had the ability to move a mouse and click on things, then it became graphically oriented. All right, so one of the things that you see with Mac and Windows is point and click, drag and drop. And when Linux came out, which is free, Linux has different flavors to it too. For example, there's Ubuntu, there's Mandriva, all right, there is Mint. And those are free operating systems. So if you don't have a lot of money and you can afford a computer, you can download a Linux operating system that will do a lot of the same things that OS X or Windows do. And the software is free. So the operating system that runs the machine is free, but you have to know how to install it. You can install various programs that do word processing, as well as spreadsheets and data projection. It's free, but you still have to know how to use the system. So technically, it's not free. You still have to invest time in learning how to use it. But the thing about Linux, as compared to Windows and Mac, nobody's designing viruses or malware for Linux. It's not worth the time. Not enough people are using it. But if you're just doing something low end, they've even got Linux now, so it looks like a Mac interface or a Windows interface. So you have your programs, applications, utilities, and then device drivers as part of your system software. So the hardware are the actual physical components. The softwares are the things that you install on the physical components to make them work, to make them do work. And anytime you then are connected by a network, you have to be aware of there are agencies out there that are looking to find ways to co-opt, to steal, and reroute your work to their benefit.